meet the Medicas Hospital team. They're opening a branch in Medina, Firestone.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes, Firestone.
Where exactly in Firestone?
Well, it's right behind the SGSSB.
So if you are heading
from Presec,
okay,
the Presec, the school.
Yeah.
Know, after the after the overhead, it's just to your right.
To your right.
Okay.
To
your right. Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, there you go. For those of you who wanted to visit Medicas Hospital and Dr. Yosafo to clarify your health needs, they are getting closer to you. Yeah. The main hospital is in Mampong. Equiapim.
Yes.
Okay. So Doc, today we have a very delicate issue, and a lot of people have experienced this, and I need us to talk about it.
Right.
Okay. Burns. Ojashishe ana
yes ojashishe
ayoja fireman.
So I hope he's listening.
I hope he is. There's a message that one of our listeners sent in that gives us reason to talk about burns today.
Right.
Listen to this, Doc. My young niece, who's about 4 years, has suffered severe burns. Her mother was frying kiliwili for the family, and the baby started crying. So she rushed to get the baby and then heard an even louder cry. The 4-year-old in the kitchen was badly burnt. She had dipped her hand in the hot boiling oil, and it terribly burnt and sored. Now, this had been 2 weeks. She's been under treatment, but the healing process seems real slow. She's always crying at night, always warm, and her hand looks deformed. Someone suggested we get herbal treatment, but her father insists we maintain the orthodox medicine. Lexus, please, we need education. I've been trying to read on the internet to support my sister, but that does not seem to be helping. Kindly let me know when this will be done so I can get her to listen in. And interestingly, the health workers have also not been patient with explaining the situation to us and giving us a lot more information on what to expect. Only last week, they said the sore was getting infected and we're getting even more worried. Wow. Help. So, right. Doc, this is what we have on our hands today. And this is quite a common thing that happens in our homes and offices, maybe. Unfortunately. So yeah. let's get to understand burns and probably how we can treat burns, what first aid measures we can take, and whatnot, Doc.
Right. So once again, good afternoon to all our listeners. And before I start, special good afternoon to Mr. and Mrs. Bright Ofori, latest couple in town. Bright is a member of my staff, got married over the weekend.
Oh, so, wow. A Medicas wedding?
Yes.
How come I wasn't invited? Doc, I'm a part of the family. Don't be doing this.
When you come to the wedding, it means you must follow.
Oh, yeah. But I don't want to do the Deutsch, so.
Right. So, Alexis, what's a burn? I think we should start from there, try and get an understanding of, what doctors mean or what healthcare professionals define as a burn. So a burn refers to an injury, to the skin and some of the tissues underneath the skin.
Okay.
Primarily caused by heat. But it can also be due to chemicals. It can be due to friction. It can be due to electricity. And it can also be due to radiation. Oh. So when you and I think of burns, ojashishe, so we think about thermal burns, the heat burns. But we should also not forget that burns, which is the injury to the skin and sometimes other tissues, can be caused by chemicals, electricity, friction, and then also radiation. We also would classify, sometimes when you are trapped in a room, which is burning, and you breathe in, you inhale, the injuries that occur to your respiratory tract, your airway, as a result of smoke inhalation, would also be considered as burns.
So internally, you could have burns.
Exactly, because you are inhaling the smoke and the air, which can be very hot.
Okay.
Right. So it's not only the skin. Now let's look at some key statistics. Globally, 180,000 deaths occur each year from fires alone. Globally. And I'm just talking about fires. Right. Global data is unavailable for deaths and injuries from chemicals, electricity, radiation, and friction burns. Unfortunately, even worldwide, we don't collect enough data to look at burns as a result of electricity, burns as a result of chemicals, and so on and so forth. I'll go into examples of these chemicals later. In Ghana, 50% of the injuries, when we talk about burns, are due to hot liquids, what we call the scalds. Yes, hot liquids.
Okay.
So it could be hot oil, it could be hot water, anything that is hot liquid. And this is data coming from the burns unit at Korle Bu Teaching Hospital.
Okay.
50% of the burns involve children. So I'm not surprised that the patient or the person we're talking about is a 4-year-old, right? Yes. So 50% of burns involve children. So they are at more risk because children again like to explore their environment, by touching things and by tasting things. So unfortunately, they suffer a lot more of the burns. 21% are due to explosions domestically. So a lot of these injuries happen at home. About 1 out of 5.
Okay.
So these are some of the statistics about burns in general. Now, when we talk about thermal burns, Lexus, I'm sure you've been burned by an iron accidentally.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the commonest things that happens.
Yeah.
I've seen a very funny WhatsApp video where the guy accidentally, puts the hot iron. He was trying to pick a biscuit, to his lips and got burned. So most of us have had that. So when
I know the guy as well who was he was ironing and he had a phone call.
Okay. Oh, and then he put it to his ear.
He picked the iron and put it.
Yeah.
But he bent one side and then when he went to the hospital, it was 2 sides. He bent 2 times.
Wow.
And the doctor asked him, how come you bent 2 times? And the guy called again.
I got another call. Right. So most common thermal burns are as a result of flame, scalding liquids or scalds, hot solids, and then hot gases. So when we talk about thermal, we're talking about heat, things, objects that produce heat. Then we have also chemical burns. When we talk about chemical burns, unfortunately in this country, something happened, I think 2-3 years ago, I think 2016, when the Northern Regional Chairman of a significant political party, had acid being poured all over, and he had severe burns. He made the news, and I think the case is still in court. So acids burn. And unfortunately, most people know this information, and when people really want to have a serious fight and want to disfigure you, then they pour acid on you. And acid is quite common because it's a liquid you find in a lot of batteries, so people get access to it. So it's a very common example of what we mean by a chemical burn. So when you touch the acid, or it's not hot like a boiling water or boiling soup or boiling oil, but then it can evoke that kind of reaction. Then we have electrical burns. Unfortunately, sometimes the wiring is not done properly in a household or at a factory, and the wires break during a windstorm or something. You can get burned by the electricity. Just by the voltage that runs through these electrical wires can cause burns. And the heat that is generated from electrical burns can get up to about 5,000 degrees. So, sometimes you can get burned from electrical wires, and then all you see is just a skeleton, because of the intensity of the heat that is generated. Now let's look at the classification of burns. I just want to throw this in because it's very technical, but you hear sometimes we will talk about partial and then full thickness burns, or first degree, second degree, or third degree burns. They are very, very a bit sophisticated or a bit technical. But I just want people to know that there are 2 main types. We'll have the partial thickness burns, and then we have the full thickness burn. When we say a full thickness burn, it means the whole skin is lost.
Okay.
And then even structures that are deeper to the skin, the fat underneath the skin, the muscle, or even bone sometimes, is also burnt.
And they could be irreplaceable?
Yes, when you have full thickness burns, then this is serious. You've not just lost the skin, but you've lost, the fat underneath the skin, which performs an important role. You've even lost muscle, sometimes. So when you have full thickness burns, then your chances of survival, are not good. If you have partial thickness burns, then only a part of the skin is involved. So then your chances are good.
Okay.
Right. But that assessment will only be made by a healthcare professional. Why are burn injuries so dangerous? Why should we pay attention? Why all the fuss, if somebody would say, about burns? Well, like this, the skin performs a very important function for us. It is a barrier to infection. A barrier to infection. That's why we cringe sometimes when people bleach their skin.
Okay.
We're not talking about beauty, but The skin is made up of layers, and these layers, the primary function is to protect you from infection. So you've got skin all over your body, and it has a very important protective function from infection, from microorganisms. That's one of the most important functions of the skin. So if you lose your skin or some layers of the skin, then you're at risk of sepsis or infection generally, right? And that is why it becomes a real problem. So even when you get a partial thickness burn, all right, you've lost some of the skin. So you're at an increased risk of developing an infection. And then the infection can get into your bloodstream, and blood goes everywhere.
Okay.
And then you get what we call sepsis, and this becomes a real problem. Indeed, burn wound sepsis accounts for 10% of all deaths in burns. So it's quite a big problem. Again, when you get burns, I mean, we all see blisters. You know, when you get a burn, you see blisters. So imagine when you get a significant part of your body involved in a burn, and anything beyond 15% of your body surface area. And again, we have charts that we use in determining what percentage body area is involved. Anything from 15% onwards, upwards, is significant. So you form a lot of these big blebs, and the blebs contain fluid.
Okay.
So you can easily become dehydrated. The fluid is coming from your blood vessels.
Okay.
Or the blood, if I put it that way. And so you can easily reduce your what we call the circulating volume, and your blood pressure drops.
Ah.
If it drops significantly, it means that the pressure with which blood is getting to vital organs, like the kidneys, also goes down. And if the kidneys don't get enough blood going to it, you suffer something we call acute kidney injury, and the kidneys might shut down, for example. And you go into a state we call shock.
That's serious.
So these blisters and blebs, if they are very extensive, it can lead to low blood pressure and then damage to your kidneys. Again, burns can destroy a lot of red blood cells, and the patient can become very anemic. You lose a lot of blood as a result of that. And then lastly, it can leave you with long-lasting deformities and disabilities. Unfortunately, as a doctor, I've come across cases where rivalry, and mostly we see this with females, where they are fighting over a man, and they go for acid. Why do they go for the acid? I want to disfigure my rival, so that you are coming for my husband, or we are chasing the same boy. I will see whether if you have that kind of face, the man will look at you. So sometimes this knowledge that burns, even if they heal, they would leave you with terrible scars. People latch onto that, and then they want to go, for the acid. So burns, even if you survive the acute phase, you may be left with very disfiguring, scars, and certain disabilities. So these we call contrast. So these are the main reasons why burns are very dangerous, and we have to approach it in a certain way.
Okay, well, if you have any questions about burns and our topic for discussion today, you can send us a WhatsApp message on 0244340437. A bit later as well, we'll activate the phone lines, and you can call if you have questions. We're live on our Facebook page as well, so our Facebook family can also put your questions there, and we'll share it with the doctor. But let's talk about some of the first aid measures we can take when you have a burn, because I know people, when they have a burn, they'll put some salt solution on it, or rub some salt solution on it and stuff. Yeah. What are some of the things? Is that good? Is that a good thing to do?
You've seen some mild ones. We've seen cow dung and all of that. Yeah, applied to it. Right. So let's look at some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to burn injuries. And these are the first 8 things, if you like. Number 1, a burn needs to be cooled. It's heat that has generated the injury. So a burn needs to be cooled. The simplest thing to do is to run the injured part under tap water.
Okay.
Right? Or clean water at room temperature for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Consistently?
Yes. So you just open the tap. If it's possible, you have running water. Or if not, you just fetch water.
And then be pouring on it.
And then you'll be pouring over it until the pain subsides, or we'll say about 10 to 15 minutes. All right. So the adequacy of it is determined by the intensity of the pain. So we expect that after about 10 to 15 minutes, you would realize that, the pain, the intensity of the pain is coming down. Right. Do not submerge the burn part in water. So some people will just fetch a bowl of water, and then if it's the hand, for example, they will place the hand in the water, expecting that, oh, okay, I'm cooling it. What happens if you do that? Let's say it's a chemical injury, all right? You got a caustic, that caused the burn. And like this, you put it in a bowl of water. What happens is that the chemical dissipates into the water.
Okay.
And as you keep your hand in that water, the whole process still continues. And that is why we want it to be under running water. If it is also heat, a thermal burn, well, the heat moves from your skin into the water, and then at a point there's equilibrium. And then now the heat is in the water and your hand is still in there. So we don't want you to keep it in a contained, piece of water. And that's why we encourage that you use running water. Right. Number 2, do not use ice water. It's easy to think that, we need to cool this thing, so I am going for ice water. Well, you're going from one extreme to the other. Well, whenever there's a burn, the intensity of the injury varies. You've got the ground zero, if you like, and then as you move to the periphery, the injury is not as intense as what we would refer to as ground zero. Those cells probably are not completely destroyed. So if you go from one extreme to the other extreme using the ice, then you get a lot more destruction of the cells.
Okay.
Like this, if you have, to illustrate this point or make it more graphical, if you can heat glass to the point where it doesn't break, and then suddenly you pour ice into it, what happens? It breaks.
It breaks.
Yes. So we don't want to go, from one extreme. So do not use ice water. Just tap water or water at room temperature in our part of the world would do. Once the burn is cooled, and again, this is evidenced by the decrease in pain, and or after you've done it for about 10 to 15 minutes, cover it with a clean piece of material and go to the nearest health facility. Right.
Should the material be wet?
Well, the best household material to use is cling film.
Clean film?
Cling film, yes. So the women know it. Like this, you wouldn't know it. The women, they use it in the kitchen a lot. So it's this piece of plastic, that they use to wrap food and all of that. We're saying cling film because it is clean. Okay. And then it also prevents dirt. It's plastic. It prevents dirt. And then it maintains, the temperature at the right temperature after you've run it under the water, for 10 to 15 minutes. So that's the best material. If you don't have cling film, and it's very cheap. I've asked about the price, as I was doing doing the write-up for this. I look at the price of cling film. I mean, you can get one bundle of it for 5 cedis or so. So, I mean, it's something that everybody should have at home. Number 3, do not burst any blister unless you are in a hospital where the wound can be covered immediately after that is done. So there's a tendency for people to think they would rupture or burst the blisters. So it's a no-no. The moment you rupture the blister, you create a raw area. And we talked about sepsis and the risk of infection.
Yeah.
So we don't want you to do that. You just run it under water and then bring it to hospital. Where if we decide to rupture it, then we are going to dress it using aseptic techniques. Don't apply anything to a burn. Don't.
Nothing
no salt, no honey, no cow dung, no charcoal, no gentian violet. These are the things that sometimes we see. So don't apply anything to it. The risk of sepsis or infection is something that we fear a lot with burns. So a burn wound generally is clean, so we want to maintain that. We would rupture it under aseptic techniques, and then we will dress it appropriately. Once you apply these things and you don't apply them well, somebody's using, their raw hand to apply the gentian violet, and then you introduce infection. So do not apply anything. Just run it under the water, apply a clean piece of material over it, and then come into hospital. Larger burns, of course, need more special care. So if it's a small area, fine. But if it's a large area, of the body, sometimes the water pours over your torso. Look, you need to go into hospital because, as I mentioned, if it's 15% body surface area and all of that, then it's significant. So if it's a large area of burn, you need to get into hospital real quick. Now, I need to mention this. Sometimes with flame burns, your shirt catches fire, or your clothes catch fire. Most people run away from the fire, with their clothes on fire. The air has oxygen, and we need oxygen to burn, fire. So as you run, you tend to provide more oxygen
for the
fire. So we advise that you stop, you drop, and you roll, to put out the fire. So if it's clothing, then that's what we'll do. Then you take off all the clothes, if it is possible. If you can't do it, then whoever is assisting you, should gently take off the clothes, because depending on the material it is made of, it can get stuck to the skin. And although you don't see any obvious flame, the heat will still dissipate into the skin and then continue to injure the individual. Right. For the following burns, you must always go to hospital, as an immediate or a decision or a first aid. If you've got burns to the hands and feet, your hands are very delicate and very important. Without our hands, you can do very little. So we don't even want to treat you, and at the end of the day, you have very significant deformities involving your hands. So hands and feet burns, go to the hospital immediately. Burns around the genitalia, I think that one I don't even need to, because as for that area, especially the men, they don't joke with it. So burns around the genitalia, immediately go to the hospital. Burns to the face, another complex area. Burns associated with being trapped in a burning building, because of the smoke inhalation.
Right.
And the injuries that can occur to the airways. Electrical burns, chemical burns, and then also radiation burns. Okay.
If you have any questions, please give us a call right now, 0302216541. We have a few minutes to pick a couple more calls, but I think that Doc has explained all of these things quite well. A few messages in here. Quite a sad one from Makosby Anthony. He says, Kwame, you've made me remember the pains my nephew Dennis endured in the year of 2002. My mom sells cooking oil, and they were heating one. The negligence of her mother. Oh my God, I still feel the pains because of his agony. He kept mentioning my name. I left school to attend to him, and every time we got to the burns unit of a Komfanochi hospital, oh my God. Parents and caretakers, let's be critical of the safety of our kids. Anthony, thank you very much, Anthony. Yeah. And I'm sorry that we're putting you through this emotional phase. Now, Senyo in Adenta says, Lexus and Dr. Safo, I just want to know if a burnt skin can be treated and you may have your skin back to normal.
Well, it depends on the degree of the injury. As I said, if it's a full thickness burn and the skin is gone already, so if it's a partial thickness burn and a superficial one at that, then the skin can be preserved, where the blister has not been ruptured and all of that. And then depending on the layer that is lost, then it can grow back. It's like when you have a friction burn, you lose the skin. You can actually hold that very thin skin, and then after a while, you realize that as if it grows back, the skin grows back. So it all depends on the degree of the burn. So sometimes, even if we've got very deep burns, we can do what we call the skin graft, and then they take skin from one part of your body, and then they would use it to cover the injured part.
So what about the other parts that they take the skin from?
Well, because we take it at a very superficial layer, it grows back. The part where we harvest the skin, that grows back easily.
So, Lexus, I'm glad you're discussing this topic. Please stress on the gas we use for cooking in our homes, because they are really becoming a nightmare. My cousin suffered it 2 months ago, and she's undergone plastic surgery. She has been discharged at the burns unit last week. It's really becoming serious. And she sends pictures of the little girl. Really sad. The day in the USA is asking, can skin graft eradicate severe burns completely without showing any sign of it?
Yeah, so I think that's what I was alluding to earlier, that at a point we would do what we call a skin graft. Take superficial skin from some other part of your body and then use it to cover, the injured part. But again, it all depends on the extent of the burn. Lex has asked doctor about applying natural aloe vera immediately after certain burns
it worked for me. That's from Yao in Greater Estates.
Right. So again, I would say it depends on the degree of the burn. If we are talking about a very superficial burn, the danger with applying or we giving that blanket advice, don't apply anything, is that there's a risk of infection. So you've planted aloe vera behind your house. There's a lot of dirt or dust, on it, and then you just go and break it, and then you apply it, and the skin and the infection or the burn area gets contaminated. That's always our fear, that the wound might get contaminated, and that's why we say, look, don't apply anything if you can. But yes,
Green is also asking if it's advisable to apply palm oil on a fresh burn.
No,
Okay.
we wouldn't encourage that.
What about herbal medicine?
Very controversial area. So I would repeat myself. We do not encourage applying anything onto the burn at home. The moment it happens, the first 8 things, run it under cool water, apply some clean material over it, preferably cling film, and get to the hospital where it will be dressed under aseptic techniques.
Okay, there you go. 0244340437. You can WhatsApp in a question or two. I think I have a minute or so for one more.
We don't have to worry about nothing. 'Cause we got the fire and we burning one hell of a something. They're gonna see us from outer space, light it up. Like we're the stars of the human race. When the lights turning down, they don't know what they heard. Shut them out.
Right, so Nitete on our Facebook Live page says, very educative. Doctor, God bless you. So I'm sure people might have questions that they would want to personally call you and ask, and probably people have burn issues that they would want to seek your help. Is Medicast able to help?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we treat more patients with burns than we would like. I would like to, yes, because it's very painful, and it can leave you with some disfiguring, scars.
Yeah.
So even sometimes after it heals, then there are issues of cosmetic issues and all of that. So yes, we're able to help. And those who want to reach out to us, the phone number is 0501 477 340. 0501 477 340. We'd always continue the conversation on our Facebook page, Medicast Hospital.
Okay.
And if they want to come to us, it's Mampong Ekwapim. And from the 16th, you can also find me at Medina Firestone.
Medina Firestone, just behind the SSB. Is that it?
Yes, SGSSB.
SGSSB Bank. Dr. Yao Safo is CEO of Medicast Hospital. Thank you very much. This has been very educative. I like that, and we appreciate your help. Yeah. Okay, so that's about it. Our Drive Doctor here on Joy 99.7 FM.